Hi again. Last week I did a video answering questions that had come in through my comment section and through my email inbox. I didn't get very far on those questions, so this week I wanted to answer a few more questions. We'll see how far we get. John, I have 3 albums of copyrighted music. Is it legal for artificial intelligence to listen to my music and to learn from my melodies? I don't have a definitive answer on this one yet. It's a tough legal question that's right now working its way through the courts, and I think is eventually going to be decided by the Supreme Court. It'll probably be another 3 or 4 years until we know for sure. And this is a question that really affects all of us as creators. I know that over the years I've published hundreds of blogs and videos, legal commentaries, and even a few books on a wide range of intellectual property topics. A few months ago, I was doing some legal research and asked Chat GPT a question and noticed that the response that Chat GPT gave me was very similar to a blog I'd written a few years earlier. Now, I don't know whether this was just a coincidence or whether maybe the blog that I had written was just an accumulation of bits and pieces that I had read in other places. And I had learned from these other bits and pieces in the same way that Chat GPT learned and ended up at the same place with the same series of words that I had used in my blog. And as I thought more about it, really, where did the source of my content come from? When I was a young kid, we lived near a library and I just spent a lot of time in that library. I think they must have had free babysitting. But during afternoons there, I'd read the World Book Encyclopedia or bits and pieces of books. Sometimes they'd have free movie afternoons where they would show public broadcasting system movies. But it was all these little pieces that allowed me later to create some original copyrighted content. So in creating my content, had I violated copyrights from the original authors whose bits and pieces I had originally learned from? And I think that's the question that the courts are having to deal with now. What is fair use in the consumption of bits and pieces from otherwise copyrighted content? Is it fair use for us to read 20 books or 20 million books, for example, and then write our own book based on what we've read in these other materials? I'm not exactly sure how these cases are going to come out. I do know that as a matter of public policy, we give the copyright fair use doctrine wide berth when it comes to the use of copyrighted materials for educational purposes. I think there's a strong argument here that when AI trains on copyrighted material, it's really just learning. It's not copying the material per se, but it's learning from the material. And I think this can be demonstrated by asking ChatGPT the same question twice. What we find is that ChatGPT is non-deterministic. That is, we don't get the same answer time after time after time. Especially when we make small changes to the input prompts, we can get wildly different answers. So in this case, ChatGPT isn't just copying material, but rather it's learning bits and pieces, actually sequences of words, and how those words would be put together in the most meaningful and correct way. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's going to need to take a look at existing copyright law and determine how best to apply that law to this question of training artificial intelligence. And if I was to take a wild guess on how this is going to come out in the Supreme Court, always dangerous, my guess is that the majority will decide that fair use applies in the training of artificial intelligence on copyrighted materials. And if, as a matter of public policy, we want to do something different with respect to our copyright laws in the training of artificial intelligence, then it will be up to Congress to pass new laws on the subject. Anyway, great question. Grab some popcorn. We'll just watch this one together. Okay, next question. Who had the first patents? Where did the patent system come from? Okay, the first patents, as far as I know, date back to the Sybarites around 720 BC. Now, Sybaris was an ancient Greek settlement in southern Italy, and this is kind of important because the first patents were actually about food. As legend goes, if you had a new food recipe, you could write down the recipe and you could nail the recipe to the gate of the city of Sybaris. And for 1 year from posting your recipe on the front gate, you were given a monopoly to serve and sell your recipe in public. In the United States, the first patent went to Samuel Hopkins for the invention of a new method for making potash, which was important in fertilizers and in the manufacture of soap. In those days, it was the responsibility of the Secretary of State to manage and examine patents, and Thomas Jefferson was the first patent commissioner as well as the Secretary of State. A funny story about Thomas Jefferson: reportedly, he kept a shoebox under his bed with copies of each of the patents that had been issued. He would use this box of patents in order to examine new patent applications that were coming in. Now, in reality, Jefferson was an inventor himself and probably just kept copies of the patents under his bed because he liked to read patents at night. I don't know. But anyway, this tradition of a shoebox of patents was carried on for nearly the next 200 years as patents were stored in boxes called shoes in the patent office on shelves so that examiners could go through these boxes of patents. And even as a young attorney, when I was first starting out, to do a patent search, we would go to the patent office in Crystal City, Virginia, pull out boxes, shoe boxes full of patents and flip through them looking for art related to the patent application that we were working on. John, where do you buy your shirts? Okay, this seems like a really random question, but the answer to the question has been super important to my business. I learned something from the startup company where I buy my shirts that's had a very positive effect on the way I run my business. Okay, the short answer is I buy my shirts from a place called Proper Cloth in New York. It was a startup company started by a couple of guys on the internet. They made ordering shirts from them super easy. I hate shopping, and so this was perfect for me. You just stand in front of a mirror, you take a picture of yourself, you send them the picture, and from that picture they use their magic AI or whatever it is to measure you and send you a perfectly fitting shirt. If there was anything at all wrong with the shirt, if it didn't fit, you'd send the shirt back and they would send you another one, no questions asked. And they had a bazillion colors. It was just fun picking out colors and ordering shirts from them, and the shirts weren't expensive. I think I was spending between $75 and $100 per shirt at the time. I placed an order for 4 shirts, and I had my initials monogrammed on one of the cuffs, mostly so that hotels wouldn't lose my shirts when they were being laundered. So I received the shirts about 2 weeks later. They fit perfectly. And then I got a letter from the company about a week later saying they'd made a mistake in my shirts and that I had ordered the monogramming in dark blue, and instead they sent the monogram in black. And for that reason, they were sending me 4 brand new shirts with the correct thread on the cuffs. Now, I was blown away by this. I was a little embarrassed to be receiving 4 free shirts from a startup company. I honestly hadn't even noticed the mistake, and when I contacted them to tell them to forget the new shirts, I didn't need them, I was happy with the shirts I had, they said no worries, they'd already shipped the shirts. This was just such over-the-top service. How could you not want to do business with a company like that? And by the way, I have no relationship with Proper Cloth. They don't sponsor my channel. I did receive 4 free shirts about a dozen years ago, but ever since I've been a loyal customer of Proper Cloth. I love their products, and more than anything, I really love their service, probably at a time when it was very expensive and difficult for them to correct a problem. And I share this with you not because it's about the shirts, but about how we can build strong loyalty with the people who do business with us. Okay, that's enough for now. I'll save some more questions for the next video. If you've got some questions you'd like to have answered, put them in the comments section below. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video, for subscribing, for being part of the million subscribers who've joined this channel. I'm so grateful. I'll see you on the next video.